Hubbard. I'm COO at RevGenius, and I'm super excited to have this panel with us. So we've got Todd, Will, and Chris, all experts in the space on leveraging video content. We're discussing how to leverage video content to drive revenue. BB is going to be dropping, BB or Prague is going to be dropping an intro question in. Audience drop some stuff in there. We also have the Q&A section on the side panel. As you guys have questions through this, go ahead and drop those in. We'll try and carve out some time at the end to answer those, as well as if there's anything like really contextual or pertinent, we'll try and get to that, as it comes in. If we don't get to your question, don't worry. We're recording all of these. We'll get back to you afterwards and make sure that we get answers to those. And you can always write into us and share any feedback or ask any questions that way as well. We'll get recordings out early next week for all of this so that you'll have it as a reference point as well. Great. Well, go ahead and go around the horn here really quickly and let each one of you briefly introduce yourselves. Todd, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So, hey, everybody. I am Todd Klauser, head of audience marketing at Audience Plus. Real quick background, spent 10 years doing being a YouTube creator. Got into B2B SaaS about 4 years ago, and now here I am. So
awesome. Chris, you're up next.
You say Chris? Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry.
Hello. Yes. Hello. Sorry, I missed the name. So Chris van Praag. I'm an account executive at Supered, also a content creator for Apollo. Been in SaaS for about 4 years. I discovered video really as a way to put my voice out there, show that I was maybe more than just a kind of boring salesperson, wanted to show some personality, and have been producing video on LinkedIn and TikTok to pretty good success for the last 4 years, and turned it into a side business for myself.
Awesome. Last but certainly not least, Will.
Thank you ever so much, Jason. Yeah, pleasure to be here. My name is Will. I'm an influencer, so I make content online sometimes, but I also help a few of my clients with video these days as well. For example, right now I'm in New York in a studio helping the fellas over at the MPC film their own course. So doing it for other people, not just myself these days.
Awesome. Well, I had a few quick questions I want to get you guys' input on before we get into some of the meat of it. But video has been a hot topic for quite a few years now. Everybody's saying, hey, we need to lean into video this year. We need to execute against the video strategy. But in my experience, the vast majority of people don't quite get past that hump. They'll try, they'll give it a shot for a little while. They may not even get that far, but it sort of remains on the list of things we need to do, but we don't actually get done. What do you guys think is the primary blocker on this? Why do people struggle so much, whether that's an individual or at an organization level, to actually be able to get across that initial hump to even get to a place where you can start trying to do things strategically? Chris, you want to take that to go?
Yeah, I think people overthink it. To be frank, I think people worry about maybe how they'll appear on camera. Maybe they don't have the right equipment. I think in larger organizations, there's obviously a fear of sticking to brand guidelines, getting approval, and there's a lot of red tape involved. Content calendars. We want to plan everything for the next 3 months. What are our pillars? And I think they just overthink it. And I think some of the most successful brands that I see creating content are just empowering their users to get out and create user generated content, as well as very quick maybe not highly produced video content, and just getting out there. I know that I can certainly probably speak for Will as well. Like both he and I kind of just made video content, and as a result, it resulted in some great things. And I know that's the case for we at Supered. We're a small brand, but we all produce video content, and as a result, it had significant impact on what how we've been growing our internal brand and awareness for our ICP. So I think it's a case of trying not to overthink it, and trying not to kind of step on your own toes, and just get started.
Well, it looked like you had thoughts as I was saying that.
Yeah, well picked up on that, Jason. Yeah, I think it's, again, it seems more intimidating than other forms of content creation. There's so much more than go wrong, and I do feel video is easier to do badly as well. Like there's a lot of stuff in our head, like head stuff, but like if you do video about it, it's like way more awkward than just a bad text post. You know what I mean? Because it's like you're putting yourself out there so much more. So there's like a big stigma around it. And the reality is, it doesn't take a whole production and editing skills. You can literally pull out your phone and create TikToks. And as Chris will tell you, you can get millions of views on these things for a brand. But I think people overthink it and they get in their head. And as a result, the content comes out awkward. And they're like, oh, I don't want to do that again. That was hard. And therefore, it stops them from doing it more. But definitely worth it. I mean, you know, I was at HubSpot and people would just walk up to Chris and be like, oh, it's Chris, my bro. You know, people recognize you by face. And for a brand, that's massive.
That's great. Todd?
I think in order to get started, you kind of have to lead by example. I've known, and I've made this mistake myself in the past. Like I know a lot of people, their primary goal is to get like everybody in the company posting video and just content in general. So they'll like, you know, run like a, you know, like a competition to see who can do it, and, you know, have prizes associated with it and things like that, which is all good. But I think you have to show people how to do it, specifically with video, because I mean, it is, you definitely are putting yourself out there way more with video than you are with other forms of content. So if you can show people what good looks like, I think it's way easier for people to emulate that versus just trying to figure it out on their own. The other advice that I have for people who are like getting started is, like when I started first doing TikTok content, like I just started creating it and didn't tell anybody. And like the first, like, I don't know, like 50 videos were just like absolute trash. It took way more videos to get like slightly above trash. So like you can create all this content. Nobody's going to see it like if you don't tell them about it, specifically on channels like where your ICP is not hanging out, like LinkedIn. So I mean, if you want to like start creating content, but you're worried about how people are going to perceive it, like, you know, hop on TikTok or YouTube Shorts or whatever and just create like some account that's not associated with your name, just to start. Like it's a muscle. It's, you know, the more you create, the better you're going to get on camera. And then once you are to a point where you're comfortable with like how you present the information, then you can start, you know, doing LinkedIn, create an account that's tied to your name or your company or whatever, and then go from there.
Yeah, I think you guys are all absolutely right. I think it's the vulnerability piece of it that people struggle with, and it makes them, you know, uncomfortable, wary with it. And you can attack that by two primary angles. You can try and facilitate it, make it easier, let them know how do you do that and how do you do that well. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to exposure and practice. And there's really no way that you're going to get over that hump and, you know, that those fears and concerns that you have, other than just putting yourself out there and doing it. Which all begs the question that everybody else has as they, you know, follow on to this. Where do you come down on the quantity versus quality side of things? Like, how do you balance those two, you know, especially relative to video? When you guys want to, well, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, I think Jason, you hit on something very good, which is pretty much any webinar. If you want to get good at something, the answer is always do more practice and more reps, right? But to get some nuance in that, the quantity versus quality side, I think as much time as you can find for. I wouldn't over on index on quality up front, especially when you can put stuff out on TikTok that has grainy ass footage and minimal edits and we can still get millions of views, right? That's what a lot of these platforms optimize for. If you aim for perfection from the very beginning, you're just going to have a ton of time invested and get 3 likes and hate yourself for doing that. So I would say like do what you have time for, but also like I think like there's a point of this. It takes a certain type of person to do this, and it's someone who enjoys showing up on video, regardless of if the video performs well or not. Like there's a passion piece there, which is like I feel like how Chris, you kind of told your story earlier, and Todd as well. If you enjoy it, then it doesn't really matter what happens, and you're getting reps in, and then you end up getting good at it, and then it starts doing well anyway. So I feel like if you're interested in it, just start. And everyone here has got a 4K camera in their pocket these days with a mobile phone. And the easiest way to do it is jump on TikTok. Now, of course, there's some shortcuts and some hacks and some easy things mistakes you can avoid, and ones that I definitely made. And the best way to do that, I find, is just go and find people who inspire you and look at what they're doing, and then take inspiration and say, okay, I really like the way that Todd talks really slowly, you know, or I really like Chris's background, you know, or I like how Will stops the video and then continues the video or whatever it is, and then you can kind of like write down what you like, and then you can start to form your own style, and you can just fast track your learning by looking at what other people who are successful doing what are doing.
Yep, awesome. Todd?
I think from a quality versus quantity perspective, I think if you focus on the quality of people, I think a lot of people view that, and this prevents them from getting started, is quality equals like production quality. I think if the quality of your message is on, that's the most important thing. So as long as I think the challenge in any sort of content game is finding a way to repeat yourself 1,000 times without feeling like you're stale. So if you can figure out how to hammer that message like home every single time, that same message, but doing it in slightly different ways that doesn't feel like you're kind of like a one-trick pony, that's kind of like the sweet spot. I don't think you should go for quantity just for the sake of being out there every day. I've fallen into this trap in the past. I know a lot of other people that have fallen into this trap in the past, where you're just trying to produce like, either one or multiple pieces of content every day. And you get to the point where the audience starts to tune you out because you're focusing on appearing every day versus appearing with some sort of value, whether that's educational value or entertainment value, whatever. As long as like the quality of the message is there, I think that's the most important part.
Oh, Chris, wrap us up on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think Todd summarized it really well. It depends on what you're trying to achieve. And like, there are a lot of moving parts, right? There are going to be lots of people on here with different views about what they want to gain from video. And maybe it is a big brand awareness piece. They want to create like a really epic video that they're going to use and publish on their website and publish in lots of places. And that's going to be very different to somebody else who maybe just wants to be more visible and wants to appear more human. So I think it's important to think about what it is you're trying to achieve, and that kind of drives the quality quantity. I think that the truthful answer, right, there's a balance, right? Sometimes there's a place for quantity and sometimes there's a place for quality. Will said, it's easy enough to produce very high quality video because we have it in our pocket. And I think Todd's made a great point about keeping the message. You can keep the quality high, and also lean into quantity. So I think about what it is you're trying to achieve, and then like go after it and maintain it. Like that's the biggest battle. Is I think that sometimes people will start and go, we're gonna do this, and do it for a bit, maybe don't see instant results, and then go, oh, it doesn't work for us, and then just leave it. I think the one thing that I can certainly speak to is that just relentless consistency of just continuing to put something out in your voice and getting better at it. And then you will determine, am I a quantity person? Can I produce large amounts of content and build an audience on TikTok because it wants lots of quantity? Or am I a quality person and people know me for these very highly polished videos that maybe they only see every so often?
No, I love that. I mean, context and end goals are always critical in anything, not just video. And so, getting that established and then working backwards from there is always a great strategy. And Chris, I'm glad you called out that what we're talking about here could be applicable to an individual doing an individual brand, could be applicable to an entire company brand, a specific product, somebody's role within an organization. And so oftentimes it's going to be important to make that distinction and call that out as we're talking through some of these things. And Will, I think one of the things that you were alluding to in your initial response was that quantity versus quantity piece may not really be so different from each other, especially trying to get started. Because what's the most effective way to level up what you're doing whenever you're getting going? It's to keep doing it and practice, because you can get better every time that you do it. And so, as opposed to that being something to stop you from getting going, it should actually be something that gets you going within it, because there's not actually that much of a debate between are you focusing on quantity or quality, because practice is going to get you there.
I think
Cool.
big
Go ahead.
caveat to that. Doing it consistently because you enjoy it. I saw a Q&A question that how do we beat the algo if we don't post every day, especially when we're starting out? I think that's the wrong reason to go into it. Right? You're posting every day a video. That's where you run really thin on things to say, and you're going to see a massive drop in quality, because you're not making videos because you have something to say. You're making videos because you feel like these platforms require feeding, right? And I've been in that trap as well, especially when working for companies. I'm like, oh, what am I going to post today? I need to post something. And then it's like, that's where my videos start going really bad and like forced, right? So I feel like you have to have the right reason no matter what. And that's just like, I wanted to make this. I thought it was funny. I thought it'd be helpful to someone. Someone asked for this. That's a much better reason than if I don't post, the algorithm's going to punish me, which is almost like being in an abusive relationship. So, yeah,
that might be the quote of the day.
I also think episodic content helps. Will knows my feeling on episodic content, but I feel like
you know mine
helps with this as well, because when you put guardrails on something, like this is the format, the concept, the run of show, the order of operations, whatever you want to call it. When you do that, you can focus on the insights, and whatever that concept is allows you to deliver the insights differently every time. So we can get into that later.
I'll shout you out. Todd, a little bit, because Gem vs. Will and Audience Plus, we basically did the same thing 8 episodes in a row. People are like, oh my god, I can't wait to watch the next one. It's like the same thing over and over again. We're just doing it slightly differently. That said, I don't have the patience for that stuff as well. Let's do something else, That's the one thing. Figure out what type of career, what suits you better. Are you like a to-do list person, checklist, never behind, or are you like someone who's just like, kind of barely getting by and, like, not me, but someone else.
All right. So, a lot would probably say that B2B was a little late to the video party relative to B2C. And can be a lot of reasons for that, but there's been challenges in how do you approach video in a B2B context, which may be in some cases a little bit more technical, stodgy, or whatever than what you get into a B2C context. And so there's obviously differences, challenges, stuff like that in one area relative to another. Chris, we were talking before we hopped on here. But this was something that you've done well in figuring out how to leverage that relative to your roles and responsibilities. So I'd love to hear what you've got what your thoughts are.
What, in the context of finding the time to do it?
No. In the context of how to do it well in a B2B motion.
Yeah, I think that is tough, right? I think people fall into kind of two traps. They make it's completely like not relevant. And there are, I'm all for, I'll just put it, I know there seems to be a bit of a thing online about should we be posting personal content on LinkedIn, and people are doing that a lot more, and it seems like videos are, hey, here's just my day. I'm all for that, but I appreciate some people maybe don't feel like it's the right place for it. And then there's the I'm going to make a video and it's basically just going to be an ad for my platform. And I don't think that often lands particularly well, because people on LinkedIn aren't really expecting or wanting to be sold to. And maybe you get lucky and you've got a bottom of funnel lead that sees the ad, that makes the connection, that wants to DM, and you get that. And as a salesperson, great. But that was my approach when I first started. I was like, I'm just going to make video content. I'm going to basically make video content of our case studies. I'm going to tell people about how wonderful we are, and that everyone's just going to reach out to me and they're going to want to buy it. And it obviously never happened. And the balance I found was when actually I would just focus more on pains, which as a salesperson I was very close to, like what are the pains that we solve. and how can I make this fun and about me? And I found like what felt like a nice balance between sharing something that felt like it was relevant enough for me to be putting on LinkedIn, and it clearly had an audience, and I was building an audience of folks who would consume my content. And it was fun enough that it felt like it was me, and it was lighthearted, and it stood out. So it is a really tricky balance, I think. But my inclination would be to lean more on the human, personal side, knowing that it's going to have some kind of a tie to it. But I've always just, I don't know, I've always just been able to like look at the goal of what am I trying to do here? What value am I trying to give? What pain am I explaining? What is the meme? Like, what is the funny, ubiquitous thing that people can get behind that I'm making content about? And then how can I make it fun? And not everybody will be about making it fun. People might want to make it informative. They might, they might want to do a get ready with me and talk about that. But I think the boundaries between of B2B are broken down a bit. It feels more human. LinkedIn feels way more human than it did when I first started looking and using it, 4 or 5 years ago. So I don't know if Will and Todd agree, but it feels like we're in a place now where B2B and the lines are a lot more blurred.
I don't think they ever were not blurred. I think just there wasn't that. There's just less people in B2B than there obviously are in B2C, right? Because even like in 2020, like you were creating on TikTok and I think people like Leslie Vinette and whatnot, they were all doing it. Just there's obviously less people who work in B2B than people who don't work in B2B, right? And a lot of those people who started early got a massive head start as a result. So yeah, but I don't think there's ever such thing as late. You know what I mean? The only thing that's late is starting tomorrow's the day. You know what I mean? So I don't feel like the boat's been missed anyway. And by the way, you're on a vlog, so be ready for that on LinkedIn. Just so you know, everything is content. Here's a day in the life of Will Aitken in New York.
Well, you're doing this not just for yourself, but it sounds like even primarily for other brands right now. How are you navigating and driving connection and engagement across those?
Don't ask me. That's a deep question. I'm just surviving here. Yeah, no, I guess it's just like what the goals. I think that I think it's like they all feel very different to me. Some of the people I work with. So I work with a few brands: Sell Better, Aligned, and 30MPC. Sell Better kind of tongue in cheek, and they get to make fun and whatnot content. And then 30MPC do the Minutes Presidents Club do a lot of like tactical sales content. But it's all very sales related, which is why I still enjoy it. I didn't really want to be a video agency owner, but here I am. So it's more like, oh, well, the topic's still interesting to me, so I'm happy to do the editing, and I learn stuff while I'm at it as well. And I can also tell what's good and what's worth cutting, what's worth keeping as well. But yeah, to answer your question,
that works.
Going. It's kind of funny. Like the one thing I would say is Sell Better is a good example. They were doing things for 2 years and they never had anything pop up. I don't really know why, because I look back and it's good stuff. But then there was just like a slight tweak where I just changed the thumbnail and the titles on some of the YouTube videos, and they suddenly went from like an average of 100 views to like 100,000 views, just because I put, instead of cold calling tips, I put 35 minutes of cold calling tips. And then it just that seemed to make all the difference. So just like experiment as well while you're doing things. And I just saw that on someone else's video. It was about 35 minutes of Minecraft tips or something like that. And I was like, oh, I should do that for cold calling. So look for inspiration elsewhere as well.
That's interesting. Todd, specific challenges you've seen in the B2B space that you've had experience trying to tackle?
Yeah, I think a trap that a lot of companies fall into when they're creating not just video content, but I think video content has made this exponentially like increased, is that I think a lot of people now are trying to create content for the algorithm. I think Will mentioned there was like a comment earlier on like the algorithm. And I think like at the end of the day, like engagement is what we want, views is what we want. That's the audience telling us that like the content was good. But at the same time, like we have to we have to associate that or start out with some specific goal in mind, like when we're creating the content. So if we're just creating the content for eyeballs, we fall into this trap specifically as SaaS brands of people will start to like know who you are, but not what you do. I've seen this 100 times. I think everybody in the audience can probably relate to this, where they could probably like pick out a logo and know who that company is based on the stuff they produce. But if you asked them what that company did, they would have no idea. So I think starting out this video process with like the goals or the problems that we're trying to solve for before we start creating is going to help with that. So like I said, that would be like awareness of the product versus like brand awareness. So like we can build that into whatever style of content that we're creating. Like now more than ever, customer retention is super important because, you know, budgets are less than they've ever been. Acquisition is harder than it's ever been. So simply by, I know this is kind of like the cliche advice, but by like talking to customers, or if you don't have access to the customers, talking to customer success, figuring out what like those top 3, 4, 5 problems that your customers are dealing with on a daily basis, and then building content around those things that allows you, again, this is that thing that we're solving for of how do we talk about the same thing 100 times without sounding stale or tweaking it in a way so we're addressing for like nuance of different people. How do we take those problems that customers are having that we're pretty sure the rest of our broader ICP are also having and create content on that so we can directly like associate this content with, hey, we're helping with retention or upsells or any of those things. Starting with the goal and then creating in that vein is going to help you significantly when, you know, leadership comes to you and says, hey, like, what's this podcast doing for us? What's the ROI? Like, we've invested resources in this. Can you show us anything that's come out of it? I think if you start with the problem you're trying to solve and then work down and build that into the concept of your content, you're setting yourself up for success that way.
Just, I think what you're saying there, Todd, is chef's kiss, the primo. Basically, figure out what the problems that your company or your customers, potential customers, desired customers have, and then just tell them how to fix it and stuff, or make fun of it, you know? So, you know, there's I'll just share this real quick because, you know, I like going on script and stuff. So look, Todd, what you were talking about earlier, Todd, and I think it's come so much further than just video as well. Like if you had one idea, so this is something I came up with. Let's say Todd and I used to work at a company called Lavender. One of the problems they help solve is keeping your emails out of spam.
Well, I don't know if we're seeing what you're supposed to be trying to share.
Oh gosh, what did you just see? Oh, I selected a PDF file. Look at that. Oh no, that's
No.
you. Okay, I'll get this. Don't worry, guys. Don't worry. Don't panic. This is normal. Entire screen. There we go. Just press the wrong one. That's all. So anyway, Todd and I used to work at a company called Lavender, and one of the problems they solved for the customers was keeping the emails out of spam. So then you can come up with like 8 tips as an educational text post, and then you can come up with an image that shows you a graph of how to get your emails delivered and what things with loads delivered. And you come up with a video on like teaching. So like you basically get one idea and just cut out 9 different ways, potentially even 18 different ways. But that way you can spread out one idea and make it have legs and keep talking about the same thing over and over again. So people go, oh, spam. I'm still getting stuck in it. I've tried all these things. Who knows something about spam? Not the can of spam, the spam folder. Those guys do. I'll go talk to them and end up buying a product. That's the idea. That's how we get the revenue, I think.
And it's more reusable, right? Like that kind of content is, as a sales rep, I would use that in a sales. I would use that in reaching out to people to show value and to, you know. So I think it's beyond like what channels can it be posted in, and then yes, hopefully that results in impressions, and maybe we're tracking that as has it generated a lead and has that lead turned to revenue. But equally, can we escalate sales cycles by having great content that people enjoy that isn't just like, hey, I sent you another ebook that you probably won't read. Like, actually, here's like a really cool piece of video that explains in a fun way or whichever, educational way, how we're solving for that problem. And it helps people to kind of think about it in a different way. And we know video is engaging. So yeah, think about it from that perspective as well.
Well, you guys anticipated where I was going to go with this, so let's keep that going. We're spending a lot of time because I think it's the primary thing that is going to drive success on. What's the end goal? What's the end result, and working backwards from there. But what advice do you guys have as far as selecting or defining what that end goal is, especially when it's going to be relative to working within an organization where you've got to get alignment? A lot of times alignment, not just across different individuals, but different departments. So how do you pick what that end result goal is? And then how do you start working backwards from there? Chris, you want to pick that one up and take us off in that direction?
I will pick it up very briefly because I'm a salesperson, and so I have never been a strategy guy. But what I will tell you that I will always ask whenever we get an inbound. I will always ask like how they heard about us, and often that is related to content. And I will always feed that back to the demand gen team. And we as a team are always talking about what kinds of content, how regularly we should be producing content, what area of the product we haven't produced content about, where are the gaps on our YouTube channel, and then we all as a team are contributing to that. I don't pretend to be part of that strategy other than a very willing contributor. And that kind of goes back to the point that that I think Will was saying about, you need to lean on the motivated folks that are wanting to create, because they are the ones that will be able to help you to produce the kind of content that you want to do. So yeah, certainly not a part of the strategy outside of like trying to establish like where have they heard about us, and associating it to revenue that way, and speaking to the demand gen team. But I'll refer to the far more knowledgeable chaps.
Well, I mean, you're being strategic. You're just being strategic relative to driving revenue.
Sure.
Okay. Get a freaking NDA with me, Todd. Just say yes. Be a man say yes.
Will, what advice do you have for people that are struggling to try and figure out what is that end goal or result that we need to be building backwards from?
I think you need to find the case studies. Todd doesn't seem to want to break the NDA with me, so I'll go and settle on this one. I'll take accountability for this one. But so you're obviously, you can point to other companies and say, look at the success they've had. And by the way, this is all available publicly, so I don't think actually I'm breaking NDA. If we looked at how many posts we did a week and how many people were actually visiting our page, this is all TikTok, for example, then all of these weeks would have looked like a total waste of time. Frankly, posting 6-7 times a week to get 15 visitors, the math doesn't math there, does it? But then eventually, if you commit to it and you believe in the process enough, you get something like that, where we got 400,000, and then our page visit got 4,600 people. And then we could look at our site referral traffic and see that a week we have more signups and more people come to our site from the website that's TikTok, right? So eventually you can show these things, but it's when you're getting started, it's really hard to justify it. So I think that's where you need to point to other companies who are doing this well and say, look what they've been able to accomplish. We should give that a crack. And then make sure whoever's bought in on that, if you really want to do a company strategy, has the patience, because this is not a quick, silver bullet overnight solution, because building any kind of engagement or following takes time. So find a case study and say, let's do what they do.
Yeah, that's obviously not exclusive just to video. Content in and of itself is something that takes a while to build. And I think one of the biggest errors that I see people make is not having the patience and the time horizon to let it actually, start getting traction. Todd, what advice do you have?
I think this comes back to, again, like figuring out what prioritizing what are the biggest issues in your company right now. So again, I like to think about content in more of like an episodic way. So, and I think the beauty of episodic content when you do it well is it's uniquely suited to impact like very specific problems that a lot of go-to-market teams deal with every day. So like first off, it's like most content teams or content marketers can relate to kind of what we were just talking about. Like, you're creating content, whether it's podcast or video or whatever, and then at some point in time, leadership comes to you and says, like, okay, like what's the ROI of this? What's the value of this? And typically, like when we get that, we always say, well, it's a long-term play. Like, we have to keep going, keep doing this, and then I'll tell you eventually. But for most teams, and this isn't everybody, but for most teams, like the reason that comes up is because they don't really know what content is doing for them because they don't measure it. So the beauty of creating this like episodic content is you can build it in a way. So like the problem for the way we fix that is we can create series that are very easily turned into like ABM plays. So, but not ABM in the sense that like, hey, I'm creating this content and it's only for this specific company. The way that we create ABM content from like an episodic series standpoint is so like I'll use an example. Like at Audience Plus right now, we're building a show that comes from a customer problem. Customers need help figuring out how to distribute their content. So we came up with this show concept where our subject matter expert goes out into the wild, sources a company that's creating some sort of content, and they build them a distribution plan in that episode. So like today, let's say it's for HubSpot, and they build them a distribution plan for like a podcast that they produce. The beauty of that is you do this over and over and over and over again, and not only can your sales team then use that as ABM style content, but it's also, if you're doing it properly, it's content that the rest of your ICP is gaining insights from. So now you can start to build content in the wild that builds your brand and all of these things. But now you can also start to report back on like attributable pipeline from these sorts of things. So like, again, that's one problem that we can start from. If like attributable pipeline is your problem as a as a content team. We just talked about awareness of the product like before. Like if my goal is to that people know who I am, like we're creating this amazing content engine and everybody has heard of our brand, but nobody knows exactly what we do. Like, again, you start with that problem and you build the product into whatever series of content that you're building. So like, as an example, Will mentioned that we both used to work at Lavender. We used to do a show where our salesperson would take an email, he would score it in Lavender because it was a scoring tool, and then he would rewrite it trying to beat that score, rescore it, and then inevitably when he won, he would give you the insights on why his email was more likely to get a response. So what we were essentially doing, and we did this twice a week, we were using the exact same concept in every single episode, but the insights you were getting were always different because every cold email that we did was slightly different and the advice was going to be different. But the beauty of that show was we were essentially doing product marketing to the 95% of people who weren't in market because we were showing how the tool scored these emails without pitching or demoing what the product did. So we were doing all of these things in this episodic content that we did twice a week. And again, that was solving for like the awareness of the product without doing product marketing. And the other one we talked about was like customer retention. So like if you start with the problem you're trying to solve, and it's going to be different for every single company out there, like what are like these major things that you need to tackle like high level leadership wise? In most cases, the content team is like uniquely equipped to help solve all those problems, but we're typically not on like in those strategic meetings. Typically, content marketing is order takers. So like if you start looking at all of this stuff from like the leadership strategic level and work your way down based on what those problems are, now you can start to work your way into those conversations, and you can actually build the content in a way that like your leadership team is no longer asking what's the ROI on this. They're actually coming to you saying like, here's the problem, how can we fix it with content?
That's great. We've got just a few minutes left. We got several questions here. So let's try and get through a few of these. Let's start with one that I think will be pretty quick and easy to get through, but we've had people asking about, how do you beat the algorithm? How do you, play or game the algorithm? I anticipate the answer for is going to be some flavor of don't try to do that, or don't focus on that initially, but let you guys, go around and set me straight if that's not the answer that you guys have.
Chris, you've had some videos that have over 1 million views. What did you do to make them go viral?
Well, I sacrificed. No, I didn't sacrifice anyone.
My firstborn.
Yeah. I have a firm belief, really, which also goes against me, is that I think the algorithm is just a reflection of the quality of the content, and there's no. I think if you try and like beat it, you'll just end up coming unstuck. Like ultimately, I try and ignore it. I produced videos that I thought were just brilliant. I was like, this is going to absolutely slap, and doesn't. And then I produced other videos that I didn't think were that good, that did really, really well. And so I try and remove a lot of the kind of pressure on myself to be like, this one's going to be great. I'm going to post this on Friday at 12 because the last time I did that, it was good, and then it doesn't. I'm like, oh, I don't understand the algorithm. I think the goal is just to produce, like, try and think about a number. Like, if you're trying to beat the algorithm, the goal is like, try and give yourself a goal of like, I'm just going to make a video a week or 3 videos a week. So I don't think you can. I think you learn stuff. I think TikTok maybe it feels easier to kind of better understand, and that's more about learning from your audience, the type of content they want to see, and boosting your growth based on you providing more content that clearly people are enjoying. I think it's a little harder with LinkedIn because there's various different types of content and things like that. So, but I'm just ignore it.
One other one I think we can get to really quickly. We'll want to get your answer on this, but how do you measure revenue or results from the content that you're creating? So you would put up a spreadsheet on there where you were showing some of that stuff, but what's your recommendations on that side?
Yeah, so I used to track that mainly because I thought, hang on, why are people paying me to do this? It seems really fun and stupid. You know what I mean? So I thought, okay, if I measure this, then when someone goes, hang on, let's cut costs, they'll choose Todd instead of me. So I thought I'd write all that down there, and that became a thing like a report. And so I'll be looking at things like, okay, if I've got a funnel, I know that X number of impressions equals X number of page visits equals X number of people coming to a website equals X free signups, demo requests, whatever it is. So basically, if you know those conversions and you can track them to some extent, then you're in a pretty good spot. And generally, you also find that certain content may not get more engagement, but it drives a lot more conversions. So tracking both those alongside each other as much as you can. There's no perfect way to do it, because you can't be like that. I wish there was a way to say that person saw this and then went to our website and booked a demo because of it, but they don't often tell us that. You can leave open fields and all that stuff. But if you can see that there's a big trend between, we posted this type of content and that led to this number of people clicking through on that link that's attached to our social profile, let's do more of that. So it's more informing, like, going forward as well. That's where I find analytics out, but I wouldn't even get close to doing that until I'm already seeing content before. I feel like if you look at that too early, you go back to that problem where you're doing it for the wrong reason. It's worth doing that when you're at brand scale and you've got some great stuff working out there. But if you're tracking, like, this week I got 5 likes and next week I got 7 likes, you're gonna give up.
Yep. All right, well, we are out of time. Thanks, everybody. It's been a great session. Well, I greatly appreciate the nod to not getting enamored with direct attribution, be able to model it and get comfortable with some variability, and not being able to say, hey, that specific deal of revenue came from that specific thing. But this has been fantastic, guys. Thank you so much.